All right, Zach, can we go ahead and get started then? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Templeton, and I am the Central Vice President, and I also teach over in Clark County at Northeastern Local Schools, and I will be moderating this today. And first off, I would like to introduce OEA Vice President Jeff Wensing.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jim. Congressman, I think you're on. I'm on my iPhone. A quick story. I came up to see my mom and play in my golf league this morning, and there was a frost warning. So there was a delay, and I finally got to get on the course, and I just finished. So I was worried I was going to have to do this from like the 18th hole, but I'm in my car. Congressman, this is the second time I get to do this with you. We did it once before. I just recently watched your video. I don't know, you had an announcement about something recently. Your video talked about the middle class and providing opportunities for people to stay in the middle class and for others to move into the middle class and be able to get that training without going through any type of crippling debt. So when you make it to the middle class, you're able to stay there and not go backwards. I recently, this past week, lobbied with some of our NEA directors, with some of your fellow congressmen from Ohio, and we talked about the infrastructure bill, not only about roads and bridges, but about schools, and how important that is in this day and age, because schools are a great place and turning into community hubs, and that's where some of our training takes place for adult education, as well as with our pre-K through 12. And we know how important our schools are to our communities. And lastly, I know that you've been a fabulous and a tremendous ally for public education, not just because you have to, because you live with an educator, because you really believe in public education and how much we thank you for that and we value that. So, Congressman Tim Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Jeff, thank you. Appreciate it. I got to ask, how'd you hit him?
I hit him well. Unfortunately, I hit a couple crooked on one or two holes. Other than that, it was pretty good.
All right, very good. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Jim, thank you.
Sure.
I see a lot of friends on this call. Gary, I want you to know Pat Lowry, who's on the call, who's been on my staff for almost the entire 19 years I've been in office, and he was my teacher at Catholic school that I went to, John F. Kennedy High School. He was my government and religion teacher, and so I keep him close to keep me on the line. And you're right, you know, my wife Andrea is a first grade school teacher in Middle Ridge here in Trumbull County, and she was a fourth grade teacher for a while. She started her career in Warren City Schools, and yeah, every day in the house you have a lobbyist on behalf of teachers. And then periodically, as some of you may know, she's with her teacher friends. As I say, there may or may not be a bottle of wine involved when they're in our house, and I get the full lobby treatment when they're all there. So let me just first say thank you to all of you for being teachers, for being educators, for being involved in the education system in one capacity or another. I can't think of a more critical time for us to be focused on education. I think we are at a crossroads as a country, as a state, we've got to make some decisions post-pandemic. And I think those decisions, we're trying to show in Washington, you know, what we believe, what we feel, what we think is important, because we can either talk about outcompeting the competition in the world, and dominating the industries of the future, rebuilding our country, rebuilding Ohio, rebuilding the middle class, or we can double down on the past and go to the old economy, have the old fights, the old arguments, and really, I think, cement in the inequality in the country, cement in the lack of upward mobility in the country. And what we're trying to do in Washington now is really make the investments into our families, into our people. And I don't want to talk too long because I would much rather answer a lot of your questions. But I will say that what you've seen come out of Washington, and I know a lot of people say, well, both parties are the same, there's no difference. That's a lot of garbage, because what we've done in the last couple months, we expanded the child tax credit. And for those of us in Ohio, it's $250 to $300 a kid. It's going to lift tens of thousands of kids out of poverty in Ohio. Just to give you some sense on how many kids in Ohio, how many families in Ohio are right on the edge, 92% of Ohio families with children will qualify for the child tax credit. 92%. That's a staggering number, but we delivered for that. There were 40,000 union pensions, mostly Teamsters, that were going to have their pension cut in half to 2/3. We couldn't get anybody on the other side to help us with this. We passed it, and those 40,000 Teamsters who did everything right, missed birthday parties, missed baseball games because they were driving truck, they're now going to have their full pension because of what we did. $4.5 billion into schools, into education. You know, the state and local governments will have money that they've never had before to help rebuild. We just did a call yesterday with leaders in Southeast Ohio. You know what the issues were? Infrastructure and broadband. They all talked about the kids in the schools that have to go to the McDonald's to download their assignments because they don't have access to quality internet service. This is what I mean when I say we've got to dominate the future. You can't outcompete China. You can't outcompete Europe. You can't outcompete India or some of these other countries if we do not make the investments into our schools, our kids, our families, our neighborhoods. It's time to rebuild. And it's not like anybody did anything wrong. You know, we build all this stuff at the same time, and it all needs repaired at the same time. So, like, nobody did anything wrong. It's just what needs to be done in order for us to be competitive. These countries are trying to take our jobs, take our companies, and we've got to outcompete them. There's no other way to do it. You mentioned, you know, the video. I mean, that's what I talk to our kids about. That's what I talk to Brady about. Look, you got to work hard and you got to outcompete them. You got to show up and you got to get the skills and you got to compete. This is not, no one's going to hand you anything. And that's the kind of attitude I think we need to bring. I want to say just one last thing, and then we'll get into questions. We have got to focus on the mental health and well-being of our kids. We have got to figure out how we talk about trauma-informed care, talk about counseling, talk about social and emotional learning in our schools, figuring out and really understanding how diet and nutrition are now deeply connected to issues like depression and mental health issues because of the science and the research that has been going on, and the more and more we're learning. Issues around diabetes that affect a child's ability to learn. A child is not a car that you pull into a mechanic shop and you just kind of put in new spark plugs and change the wire. That's not how we are. We got to start treating our kids like whole kids, like human beings, and recognize that what they eat, the people that they're around, the violence that they see, the lack of care and concern, all affects their ability to learn. And we've learned more about the brain in the last 20 years than we have in the past 200. And we know that they're needing to feel safe, secure, healthy, cared for, literally can unlock their brains to be able to learn. And that's why I think we've got to have a focus on, really taking care of the kids. And if we take care of the kids and we take care of the teachers, everything else will turn out right. The math and the science and all that will work itself out. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because there's so much to cover when we're talking about education, but I'd much rather you all drive the conversation. I have a fresh cup of coffee, so I am ready to sit here and chat it up with you.
All right. Thank you, Congressman, for those inspiring opening comments. So I have an RSVP from 5 people who I know are going to ask questions. So I'm just going to start it off with that to start with. And then after we go through those 5, we'll open it up to anyone to ask a question. And at that point, if you would like to ask something, if you would just raise your hand in the reaction box there, then I can have Zach unmute you. But let's start off with Barry. Barry Alcock has a question for us.
Greetings, Congressman Ryan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Barry.
My topic for my question is the American Families Plan. Wednesday, President Biden announced his latest policy proposal known as the American Families Plan. Would you please share with us your thoughts on this proposal and how you think the American Families Plan will help public educators and the families of our students?
Absolutely. So, I mean, again, this is like a very comprehensive approach. And I know, we're getting some pushback around it, because we're having conversations about roads and bridges and broadband and that kind of thing. And this is really broadening, the idea that, children, teachers, workers, families, and communities have been left out of the deal. This is our attempt to cut them in on the deal. And we all know that schools are the foundation for a strong nation. And it's time we actually acknowledge that. We know that the key to being competitive and outcompeting some of these other countries is going to be directly linked to how our schools are and the investments we need to make in order to have creative, healthy, and engaged children. And the President's American Family Plan will make sure that the schools have the funding and the support that they need to be able to do it. So it's pretty ambitious. I mean, when you look at what's happening here, free universal preschool to all 3 and 4-year-olds, which will benefit 5 million children across the nation. And we're going to invest into aspiring pre-K teachers so that they get an affordable education and a living wage starting at $15 an hour for their work, which, is a minimum. I sometimes don't even like having the conversation about a minimum wage because it gets us focused on the minimum, not where we need to be. But it is a very important issue to make sure that we're doing that. And I'll just tell you a quick story. Yesterday, we were on a call. I told you about Southwest Ohio. There was a business person on there. And we were saying, hey, of all these things, what's going to be really helpful for you? And he talked about universal preschool to all 3 and 4-year-olds. He has 15 workers. I think 11 or 12 of them are moms. And he said, for them to be able to take their kid to school at 3 and 4 is going to save them tons of money on childcare. So it has these multiple benefits. It's good for the kid, good for the parents, good for the businesses, and helps us be more competitive. So this is also going to revitalize community college. So 2 free years of community college. It increases the Pell Grant, increases the amount of grants that are going to be awarded, and increases the funding for a multitude of minority-serving education institutions. Again, how do we become more competitive? We start education earlier on the front end, and we give people an opportunity to be able to go to community college if they want on the back end. So almost creating a K through 14 type system without incurring a lot of costs. And when you look at what we need to do in the economy over the next couple of years, we do have automation. We can't put our head in the sand and pretend like it's not going to happen. What we have to do is make sure that we reach out to those workers, get them the skills they need, make it affordable to get into the higher level jobs. We were on a call the other day with nurses. There's 4 million nurses in the country. There's a 2 million person nursing shortage. So how do we get the cashier at Aldi's or Mark's or Giant Eagle or wherever, Kroger, into track to be able to become an LPN or an RN to fill that gap? And I think if we make a national effort to be able to do this, that's something that could be very, very powerful. We want to increase access to affordable and high quality childcare, and educating and preparing teachers to work in rural areas We got to address the teacher shortage. So we have all these issues around the country: nursing shortage, teacher shortage. There's going to be shortages in utility workers. A lot of the building and construction trades are getting older as a group, as a cohort. So we need to make sure that we are getting kids on these tracks to be able to have the skills that they need, and strengthening the pipelines for teachers of color. And these are the investments that we're going to make. So those are a few examples. Lastly, I mentioned the child tax credit. We want to permanently extend that. It's in the rescue package. It was for 1 year. But talk about rewarding people for going to work, rewarding people for doing what's right, and cutting these workers in on the deal. Extending that child tax credit permanently, I think it's already cut the child poverty rate in half. Good. That's not an insignificant thing for us to talk about. So I'll leave it at that. There's also other pieces around teachers' health and wellness that I already kind of mentioned that we want to invest into, which I think is going to be critical. Really, I know how burnt out a lot of you are. It's just been an insane year, and it was a tough job before the pandemic. So we want to make sure you're taken care of as well.
Thanks, Congressman Ryan. Appreciate it. All good.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Next, we're going to move on to Tim Scamfer.
Thank you, Congressman. Would you please share with us how the American Jobs Plan is making its way through Congress, and how any parts of that plan will help our school districts?
Well, I think the big thing is the $100 billion nationally to upgrade and build new schools with better safety measures, improved air quality, those kind of things. These are the kids that go to the schools. There's going to be, it's over $100 billion. I think it's like 111 billion, 110, 111 billion to replace 100% of the lead pipes in the country. So that in and of itself is going to reduce lead exposure in 400,000 schools and child care facilities. I mean, again, it's like you want to help educate kids. It's not just, the kind of traditional ways we would think about educating kids. We know the damage that is done with lead exposure to a kid's cognitive functioning. And so why in the hell wouldn't getting lead out of the water and not lead out of the pipes that provide the water for our schools and our kids in the community, why would that not count for helping our kids be more competitive? And you see, especially in some of these urban areas, you have very high levels of lead exposure into our kids. And we just know it, and we got to give a damn enough to say we're going to fix it. And that's what, we're talking about. So there's a $680 million gap too in the amount of money schools need to do the maintenance for this infrastructure. And this is our opportunity to really close that. We want to provide broadband to underserved communities, rural, native communities. The cost, reliable, I think is the key word, broadband. We've got to reduce the price. It's got to be affordable, and there's got to be transparency. There's got to be competition. That's the only way we're going to be able to kind of reduce the prices. But here's the deal. I mean, we've talked so much about forgotten families, forgotten communities, and our goal is, as we move into the industries of the future, building electric vehicles, building batteries, building charging stations, rebuilding the country with traditional infrastructure. These communities will not be on the menu for growth. Companies are not going to invest into communities that don't have top-rate infrastructure. And we're seeing it now here in Lordstown. We have a $2.3 billion battery plant, General Motors and LG Chem. One of the issues that we're having for further expansion is water. These new battery plants, they use 5 million gallons of water a day, which is unlike any other manufacturing that we've seen around here. So if you don't have the proper infrastructure, your community is not going to land a battery plant. you're not going to have, a business locate in a community in rural Ohio that doesn't have good broadband because they can't grow their business. And they're worried about the skills of the students and workers coming in if they don't have access to good broadband because they're going to have, a subpar education. So these are investments in lifting everybody up. Like I said, if we don't do this, if we're at a crossroads and if we don't make this decision to double down on the future, we're double downing on the past. And that means we're going to put Ohio communities and families and school districts locked in concrete in the past. And we're trying to make these investments so that every community could be on the menu for potential growth.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Congressman. Next, we're going to move on to Kim Cooper.
Good afternoon, Congressman Ryan. I teach English language learners in Reynoldsburg. So my question has to do with the summer food program. And I am pleased to know that the Biden administration has extended the USDA summer food program through 2022 because I see how much our families in Reynoldsburg still need assistance. So can you tell us a little bit more about the extension?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're seeing it, 32 million children, it's a staggering number, participate in the school lunch program. And it's just a staggering number, which means we've got to deliver, but we also got to deliver healthy food. Because there's just so many kids where really their only meals are coming from the school, which is why we have, you have that summer program and why there are issues around the holiday breaks and, backpacks for the weekend and those kind of things. And again, we know more now today than we ever have about, what happens when you don't have adequate nutrition, especially when you're young, and what that does to your cognitive function. So I've worked my career to advocate making sure the USDA can extend key waivers to give schools flexibility and resources to make sure that they can keep serving those free meals to students, especially during the public health crisis. I think the USDA is committed to extending the universal free lunch through 2021-22 school year, which will be about 12 million that are experiencing food insecurity, that they'll be able to continue to get the food that they need. So that's going to be, for the next year, and making sure we provide those reimbursements to the schools and the school meal operators so that they can continue to do it. I know under the child nutrition waivers from the USDA, children are allowed to eat outside of scheduled school times, and the parents can get the school lunches, curbside pickup. We had in one of the districts here, we literally had the people going to the bus stop just to drop off the food for the kids who were doing the virtual learning, and they would just give the food to everybody, which because everybody needed it. So we're gonna keep on it, and I do think we need to have a broader conversation around what food we are giving to the kids. Making sure that they're getting food with the highest nutritional value. I think there's a heck of an opportunity for us to tie in the farming communities to really go from the farm to table, farm to school, because a lot of our farmers need help too. They need customers. They're struggling to make ends meet. So if we're spending, and this is just a general kind of philosophy for me, every dollar we spend from the public, in the military, they call it a force multiplier. I think every dollar needs to be a force multiplier. Helping the kid, it's helping the school. Why not also make it help the farmer? And we keep this money local in the local communities, and everybody benefits. So that's something that we need to continue to talk about and tease out. But we're committed to making sure everybody has the food that they need.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. Those are great ideas.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to move on to Cheryl Williams. Zach, can you unmute Cheryl?
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Ryan, for meeting with us today. My name's Cheryl Williams, and I'm an administrative secretary at an elementary school in Dublin. And I wanted to thank you also for your support of the food service program, because for OEA, I represent the bus drivers and the food service workers who are getting the food to those kids last year, as well as our custodial and maintenance workers who are keeping us safe during COVID-19. So my question revolves around that. Since last spring, Congress has passed several bills designed to help our country navigate through the COVID-19 public health crisis. We see the implementation of these laws begin to support public education systems in Ohio and across the country. I have really two parts to my question. First, can you speak to which components of these COVID relief bills help public education and educators the most? And the second part would be, do you think more work needs to be done in 2021 to help our districts and colleagues emerge from this pandemic in a stronger position than we were before March of 2020?
Yeah, so the rescue package, great questions. The rescue package provides a little bit over $4.5 billion in relief for K through 12. Which is a significant amount of money. Again, part of the infrastructure bill that's coming is going to have a focus on our schools to make sure that we continue to make those investments around broadband, around the lead pipes, those other things that I mentioned. So we're committed to doing this, and I know the president is, and I know the House is, and I think the Senate is, and so we're going to see exactly how big of an effort we can put forth here. My preference is we work with Republicans on this, but if they prove to just want to drag this conversation out and kind of do what they've done in the past, is try to talk it to death, I think we need to move. And some of this stuff we're going to be able to move on because it's a procedural thing. We don't need to get into all the weeds on that. But most of this stuff, I think we're going to be able to do through a process that's only going to only need 50+1 votes in the Senate. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get a lot of these investments done for us and for you. So it's going to be focused around broadband, food, and the lead pipes. Those are going to be kind of the three main pillars. The other piece that we're putting into the annual budget this year is really a focus on taking care of teachers, pushing social and emotional learning into the schools, making sure that every school has some approach that's really helping with the kids' ability to develop resiliency, trauma-informed care, and those kind of things. More psychologists, and it's tough because we've got a shortage of psychologists and psychiatrists too, across the country. So we've got to, again, like, what's the long-term plan here? Like, how do we provide scholarships and incentives for people to go into these fields that we need to help with the mental health issues that are across society? Those are good investments, because if we're going to be competitive, again, not to be repetitive about being competitive, but it's got to be where our heads are, and how these investments each fit into increasing our competitiveness. And so, taking care of our teachers. I mean, we know, I just know from my wife, you're the counselor, you're the psychologist, you're the doctor, you're the confidant, you're the priest, you're the pastor, for all these kids. And you need support too. I did see a study where 61, and I feel like this is a little bit of a low number, but 61% of educators and school staff report that their work is always or often stressful, which is significantly higher than other professions. And, like my wife, she comes home from school and she's, we got 3 kids to take care of, and I'm busy and I travel for work, and that burden goes on her, and that just, exacerbates the problem. So we want to make sure that we start recognizing, what our teachers are going through as well. And we have, I introduced last Congress the Teacher Health and Wellness Act, which aimed to provide support for teachers. We want to create a pilot study at the NIH, National Institutes of Health, aimed at reducing teacher stress, increasing teacher health, and boosting student achievement, but really focusing on the idea that 75% of what a kid learns is through modeling, which means we got to invest into our teachers. And, we're going to continue to push that as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your recognizing the trauma that we've been through as well and your support of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then next we're moving on to Gary Carlisle.
Hi, Tim.
Who?
Tim has been my congressman for a long time, and before that was in the 32nd Senate District in the Ohio legislature. And
I knew Gary before that beard was gray. That's how long I've known him.
yeah, but I just want to thank Congressman Ryan for being a champion of public school employees for all these years. Most recently, he stood with us at Youngstown State University and supported faculty there. He's not been afraid to go out on the line for public school teachers and public school employees anytime we've called him. So we appreciate that. And I hope that all of my friends and colleagues will support Tim's run for the United States Senate next year. I think it would be great to have the husband of a public school teacher in the United States Senate from Ohio. So we have a great opportunity there. So I just want to ask a question related to our public health crisis that we're in. As you know, we've got teachers, school employees, students who are still suffering from health and wellness issues related to this public health crisis. And I'm just wondering what your ideas are as to how we can provide more help.
That's a good question, Gary. We've got to continue to try to stomp this thing out. But what we're realizing now, and what all the data is telling us, is that there are going to be these lingering effects around COVID. These are issues around healthcare. Obviously, healthcare is too expensive. We need to make sure there's more options for people to get quality healthcare. And I hope that we can continue to expand it. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to give more people help to be able to afford it. We've got to make a dent on prescription drugs. I know the president is proposing the Medicare program be able to negotiate down drug prices, which will help across the market to reduce healthcare costs, which hopefully will open up some more money for you guys to negotiate into wages. As opposed to sitting at the bargaining table and having a superintendent tell you how much healthcare is and how that eats into your ability to have increase in wages, but continuing to provide opportunities for that, continue to get shots in the arm, and try to respond. But one of the ideas for access to healthcare that I really like is drop in the Medicare age to 50 and allow people to buy in to the Medicare program. I think that could be significant for a lot of people who need help affording health care. Things like that, increasing the public option where there's more competition out there. And those would be, a couple of the ways to do it. But as long as this thing is out there, and as long as this is affecting communities and schools, I think the federal government has a responsibility, to make these investments. Nobody complains when we do tax cuts for, the top 1%, how much is it going to cost? And all of a sudden we're giving money to local communities, to try to help out. And it's like, well, how much does that cost? That I heard somebody on TV the other day about the infrastructure bill saying like, this is a Soviet style, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, dude, we're trying to fill potholes and fix bridges. Like, what are you talking about? Like everything's got to fall into the socialism, communism. It's like, no. And I think basic health care and taking care of people in the middle of a pandemic is very appropriate for us. So I appreciate the question.
All right, thank you. So now we do have some time left. If anybody would like to ask any additional questions or information, just go ahead and raise your hand in the reaction box and we'll get Zach to unmute you. Okay, Brittany Alexander and then Larry Carey.
Hi, Congressman Ryan.
Brittany?
Hi. I just wanted to thank you. I know you mentioned it a few times that you've worked in the past and continue to work. I know with the Badass Teachers Association, they've done the quality of work life team. And I know that you've worked with members of that team as well. So I just want you to know how much that's appreciated. We really need that help.
Thank you.
So I had a question, and I'm not sure exactly how to word it, but I know that one of these, I think maybe it's the American Families Plan, has some type of requirement, I believe, for speaking about how to use the funds that are allocated with stakeholders. Is that correct that it's this one?
Yeah, I believe there's some, well, it's a draft proposal now, but yeah, it's got to be collaborative. I mean, that's our intention for it to be collaborative.
Okay, I hadn't heard that for sure, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
I can get the exact language for you. I'll make sure my team tracks it down and shares it with you.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, Larry Carey.
Sorry about
Hi,
that.
Larry.
How you doing today? How you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. My name's Larry Carey. I'm a pre-K teacher in Columbus, Ohio. My 5th year. My question is regarding about the teacher shortage and retention. Are there any steps to put in place for us to address those issues? That way we could improve our education system.
Yeah. So, I think the retention piece, to me has to be about making sure we're taking care of teachers. I've mentioned the health and wellness bill that I've been proposing. I think those kind of things are really important, for us to make sure that teachers know that, we're really trying to figure out and provide the support necessary for these highly stressful, difficult, complicated, complex jobs that you all have. I think that's going to be very important for retention. It's I think incredibly important that we say, look, your work is important. We got to be competitive, and we need you, healthy, well, at the top of your game, and remembering why you got into teaching in the first place, and your country and is here to support you. Do that. When it comes to getting more teachers, I think it's going to be incredibly important. As we expand, like I said earlier, universal pre-K, we're going to need more and more, teachers to be able to help us do that. And so we're going to need to do scholarships. We're going to, facilitate credentialing. We've got to invest in the educator leadership, but really trying to get, have a long-term plan for how we bring more and more teachers into the field. And that's going to take, I think, an initiative as well into, our inner city schools. And I think, seeing teaching as a real profession where you can go to school again, even with the 2-year extra, the community college extra, getting credentialing there, making it more available, but also saying, hey, we got scholarships and stuff. And I think across the board in all these industries that we need to fill, we should be providing incentives for people to go into these fields, because teaching, nursing, building and construction trades, these are all good paying jobs. And pre-pandemic, there were, I think it was like 70 or 80 million mid-level skilled jobs that went unfilled. And there were about 70 million low skilled workers. So the whole question is, how do we get people from the lower skills into these areas that we need to fill the jobs in order for us to have more teachers, more this, more that, to be more competitive. So I think these scholarship ideas and these incentives and credits and stuff can be extremely helpful for doing that.
All right. Kathleen, did I see your hand up? I think hang on, Zach's got to unmute you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Purdy. I'm a retired 5th grade social studies teacher living here in Alliance. I'd like to thank you. You are the reason why I'm not outside mowing the lawn, because I thought this was more important, Congressman Ryan, to be on this call. My question is, have you any idea of the long-term effects on the students, especially the students that have been taken over through state takeovers, especially Youngstown, which was the very first school to be taken over with academic distress commissions? So I'm asking, what are the long-term effects from these students that have been involved in the last 10 years with the state takeovers, which actually that bill was signed into law in 2015?
I don't know, Kathleen. I'm glad I could help you not have to cut the grass today. But that I don't have a good answer. I don't have any information on that. I think it's a great question. But I don't have an answer for you. No, there's a couple of districts around the state, but you've tipped me off, so we'll find out if there's any information out there. And I think it's important too. This is the other piece in education. We don't always really figure out these long-term effects, of the decisions that we're making. Nobody asks, and we see it across the board too. You see it in the military. You see it. It's like, I know we're doing it this way, but does it work? What's the outcome? And I think really monitoring what the outcome is important. But I don't have any answer for you, sad to say. And I'll make sure we check it out.
And thank you for being at our spring fling last Thursday.
Oh yeah.
Start. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
That woman's voice was unbelievable, wasn't she? Such a good singer.
Yes, very, very powerful. And we didn't have to tip her, did we? Because it was Zoom.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we'll see again. We'll be in Stark County a lot.
All right.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Kim Cooper.
Congressman Ryan, as I stated at the beginning, I teach English language students, and they have to take the English language proficiency test here in Ohio. I have spent approximately the last 3 months giving children tests or their accommodations for their 3rd and 4th grade air tests. And then I have 2 more weeks in May for our local tests that I'll be giving accommodations for. The tests that we are giving are taking away an inordinate amount of instructional time. I have not had consistent teaching with my students since the beginning of February. And obviously this year, things are a little different. Things are taking a lot longer. We're testing in smaller groups. But even in regular years, my schedule is constantly disrupted to give the things to my students that they need. But the tests are inappropriate, and they're hurting our kids and they're hurting our schools. What are we going to do about it?
That's a great question. I mean, this is one we hear about all the time. And of course, the state has most of the jurisdiction on these things. But we've got to continue to push for, I think, an appreciation that teaching is an art form, and that this whole idea of over testing, spending all this time around testing, I don't think is necessarily getting us where we need to be. And I don't know where the proof is that it is. I think it ties the teacher's hands. Like you said, you spend to these tests, administering to the tests. You know, I don't have a quick and short answer for you, but I do think, you know, it's moved us away from, I think, a lot of the things that we need to teach that are important. In the process of just going right to teaching to the test, we've eliminated shop class. So many schools have gotten rid of the art and music and these extracurricular, not extracurricular, but these subjects that we used to make sure we provided and offered, because you never know what some kid's going to connect with. That's going to spark something in the kid that they're going to be excited about, that they can then take into some of these other areas. So I don't have any, I don't think from a federal level where we could ban or, you know, do anything, but I do think broadening this out, and I will certainly be a part of amplifying that message for you as a senator and as throughout this campaign, that this is not the way, you know, we need to go. And I think you're starting to see some of it now. We got a couple college age kids in the house, and, you know, not super focused on these colleges that aren't focused on the SAT or ACT, you know, the kids who just don't take tests well, but are diligent students. I just, you know, don't think that's all accounted for. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, I don't see any other raised hands. So I guess we can just wrap it up. So I'd like to thank you, Congressman, for doing this with us today, and thank everybody who's on here and giving up your Saturday afternoon. I personally think it was well worth it and very informative. And we really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Always great to be with you, and thank you for your time. And I would just say, you know, invite us to your schools too. And, you know, we want to come see what you're doing. We're going to make it a point to really see what's happening, that's happening. One of the things we want to do, Jim, with this campaign is we kind of know what's going wrong. I think most of us understand that. We want to highlight what's going right, and how do we amplify and double down on that stuff and invest into it, get rid of these things that aren't working, and go all in on the things that are, that teachers on the ground know are working, because we've got to listen to, you know, our teachers. And I don't just say that to suck up to my wife. I say that because I think it's actually the right thing to do. So I look forward to coming to your schools and seeing what you're up to. We're going to have a focus on social and emotional learning and nutrition and some of these things that I think are foundational. But if there's anything else, just let us know, and we're going to be your biggest cheerleader. So thanks for the opportunity to be here with you.
All right. And I see that some people put some comments in the chat thanking you. And also then Pat Lowry, sorry, put an email address in there. If anybody would like to email the Congressman for any additional information, that's in there as well.
Yep, we can share with you legislation that we have. I talked about the Teacher Health and Wellness Act. We have a shop class 2.0 bill where we invest into bringing back shop class around, you know, coding and 3D printing and CNC machines and kind of next generation shop class. So we've got some really cool bills around education that you may be interested in. We could certainly send them to you.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Love you guys. Keep up the great work.